So you may remember last year on a Classics World video where Joe and I took out two 90s rep cars around the M25, a Toyota Avensis and a Rover 623 GSI. Well, now we've rewound about a decade to the end of the 80s, and really a car that changed the game in the company car market for Vauxhall.
An icon of the era, Jeff. Welcome to the Mk3 Vauxhall Cavalier. Although, unless you come from Britain, this isn't actually a Vauxhall Cavalier to you, because in Europe this was badged as the Opel Vectra A, where of course we got the Vauxhall Vectra as the car after this, which was the Vectra B officially, and that was to stop this car being too associated with the slightly ill-fated Vauxhall Victor. So this was a Cavalier pretty much only in Britain.
The Mk2 Cavalier, with a much squarer design, up against the aerodynamic Sierra.
It was never going to win.
The Mk3 basically took the best of both worlds. Nice, smooth, aerodynamic styling, but with the front wheel drive that the Sierra didn't have. And you ended up with this. Now this is a very early Mk3, registered January 1989. The car made its debut at the 88 NEC show just 3 months previously, so we're in probably one of the earliest surviving cars.
I would say that, and not a Billy Basic trim today. No, we've got a 2-litre 8-valve engine in CD trim, which is kind of upper middle level and comes with quite a number of rather decadent features, Jeff. I've got a clock on the dashboard, I've got a radio, I've got electric windows, heated rear window.
You've got a tape deck, and you've also got Gentlemen of Country and Western Volume 2, just for that essential company car driver listening.
I'm not sure that was standard fitment. What can you tell me about this car?
Well, Vauxhall really threw their weight behind this. So, like I say, the Mk2 sales have got disappointing, and this became sort of the people's car. It sort of put Vauxhall back into a high spot. They spent a lot of money on advertising. You might remember Derek and the Dominoes and Layla being the theme tune to the TV adverts in the 80s. Much nicer dash, ergonomically much more pleasing, much nicer to look at. I mean, how well does it drive?
Do you know what? It drives really well. That 2-litre engine, it's got a nice amount of poke to it, a decent amount of shove. The steering, nice and light. Yeah. And you know what? In all seriousness, it brakes well. It really does brake well.
Trying to put me through the front windscreen.
Which you would be nice and safe, because obviously we've got more modern 3-point seat belts locking by this stage. And in many ways, this was quite a modern car, really, in terms of the design, in terms of the shape of the interior. And I would say by the standards of about 10 or 12 years ago, this still feels relatively modern.
See, my brother had a facelift one, so they facelifted these in '92. My brother had a '94 Cavalier. At the time, I was driving around in a hire car, 2016 Astra, and I remember thinking, well, where's the progress? You know? Yeah. I thought his Cavalier was great to drive.
This still feels nice and crisp, and if I'm brutally honest, it probably feels a little bit more modern than our Austin Montego, which it would have gone up against, obviously, latterly.
Well, I think it was. You know, it came out 5 years after the Montego, and it sort of showed probably where Austin Rover were at, and then Vauxhall. I mean, like I say, Vauxhall were floundering. The sales of the Cavalier had dropped, and this one changed the game.
Really did. It was top of the sales by 1989, I believe, and overall, when you consider all generations of Cavalier, all 1.8 million of them that they sold, this is the 5th best-selling car in Britain ever, was the Vauxhall Cavalier, so no mean feat.
Our friends at Lancaster Insurance are running monthly giveaways. You can win all sorts, from experience days to tools, restaurant vouchers and tech, so check the video description for full details and to enter.
When they brought out the Mk3, they had a new entry-level engine, the 1.4. But they also had 1.6, 1.8 and 2-litre.
As well as a pair of diesel engines.
Yeah. So they had the 2-litre 8-valve, which is what this one is, this CD. But of course, it had the all-important fuel injection, which means for company car points, it had that little eye on the boot lid.
It means I'm important, yes. I'm better than you. That's what it means.
Another string to the Cavalier's bow was the sheer variety of trim levels available. And look at how many you could have with a choice of engines.
Which means there was something for everyone, and that's how you break into the company car market.
The private buyer liked them as well. It was a real high point for Vauxhall, that early 90s era, and it was facilitated by the Mk3 Cavalier. Absolutely. It really transformed the company.
And when you look at it compared to the kind of cars this was going up against when it was new, so like the Montego, which really was long in the tooth by then, and the Sierra that, again, long in the tooth, this looks more modern than any of those cars. It offered more features, and frankly, these days it looks like a newer car as well. A Mk3 Cavalier might not be the Vauxhall that everyone hankers after, and certainly not the classic car that most people hanker after. But if you're after something different, if you want something cool and retro that you can use every day, that you're not going to struggle to use through the winter, but that's a bit more interesting than a modern SUV diesel Qashqai thing, don't count out the Mk3 Cavalier.
Yeah, don't. If you can find a good one.
I rather like it.
Yeah. I mean, the slogan was, once driven, forever smitten. Now, I don't know if I go that far, but it's certainly a very competent, decent, daily classic. And for that, I give it the thumbs up.
Mk3 Cavalier, approved. Right, let's close that business deal.